Hey, be sure to stay tuned to Real Value this week on Facebook at 1 p.m. on Fridays, YouTube 1 p.m. on Mondays. You're going to be blown away. We've got Chris DeSanto from Sioux Empire Home Inspections with us today. You're going to learn a lot. With tips from Chris, and today we're talking about winterizing your home, getting things ready. Chris, we were just talking about different types of hose bibs that connect the inside of your house to the outside elements. And boy, if you don't have things taken care of, winterizing a sprinkler system, right? And that means blowing it out, right? I mean, you got to get all the water out, even the little valve that sits on the outside. You want that baby free of moisture, right?
Exactly. Water, when it freezes, it expands, puts pressure on the pipes, and therefore can burst a pipe. So,
burst a pipe, burst a sprinkler head,
absolutely,
solenoid, you name it, all that stuff that's connected.
So typically this time of year, this is the time to do it. Obviously, before the long stretches of cold weather come about, as far as getting your sprinkler lines blown out. And there's a number of different YouTube videos. I mean, some people do it themselves. If you have an air compressor and you have the nozzles and tools to do that type of thing. But there's companies that do it too, and it's pretty inexpensive. Landscaping companies, plumbing companies.
It's really expensive to replace a sprinkler system.
That is absolutely true. Trying to find leaks out in your yard, so it's something you want to nip in the bud. I think it's usually $7,500 to get your sprinkler system winterized, and definitely something you want to do. And then as far as hose bibs go, certainly making sure when the freezing weather is coming that your hoses are removed. Otherwise, what happens is they freeze on the outside, and then it just transfers that frozen water into the inside. So making sure that all your hoses are removed. Good idea to get the water out of those hoses as well before you store them, so that they're not all rigid and you're taking up way too much space. So on a warm day before the cold
when they're
comes,
nice and pliable.
When they're pliable, so that they don't you don't want to be buying hoses every year or two. And then, like you said, there are different types of hose bibs outside. Some of them are frost-free, but not necessarily entirely unsusceptible to freezing. So you still want to make sure that hose is removed, even if you do have the frost-free type.
Remove the hoses, bottom line, regardless, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Frost-free will help so that you don't have to shut the water off. Right?
Exactly.
Like in this house, I think you have to shut the water off from inside,
right,
and then open the valve up, make sure the water's out.
Exactly.
But on the frost-free, it's got an 18-inch
extension
plunger in there, right? So that it keeps the pipes for the most part.
It provides an extra level of protection, but sometimes when we're getting 30, 40, 50 below, you just never know. So there's even, some people will even go as far when they don't have the frost-free to get like a little insulating valve cover over their hose bib or spigot at the outside, just for that extra level of protection. And then obviously making sure, like we've talked about in previous episodes, the sealant around those utility penetrations is good as well, so that there's not cold air migrating inside.
So some of the things we've been talking about the outside of the house, and it's super important because it's exposed to the elements, but what about inside the house? This is often a time when people, maybe they're not thinking about the filters in their furnace if they've got forced air. What about that?
It's a really good time of year. A lot of the newer furnaces have 6-month filters. Usually it will be a thicker filter that's 6-8 inches thick or so. A lot of times it's an April air. But I always kind of tell people, good rule of thumb or an easy way to remember to change those filters is spring and fall. So before you're going to be running your heating system for an extended period of time, obviously all winter long, and then obviously once you're going to start running your air conditioner in the spring. So good idea on those. As far as typical 1-inch filter that you'd see in most furnaces, You know, some of them say 3 months,
Yeah.
and that's all dependent upon if you have pets and things of that nature. Checking it probably every month or every month and a half, 2 months is probably a better idea.
Sure.
So yeah, changing your filters is essentially one of the best things you can do as a homeowner to make sure that your furnace isn't working overtime or your air conditioner isn't working overtime and working too hard to draw air. And then another good thing to do potentially is consulting an HVAC tech before the heating season.
Yeah.
They can come out, clean up burners, do a system check, make sure that everything's running optimally and efficiently, and that's pretty inexpensive relatively. And a good idea. I mean, depending upon the age of your system, I don't necessarily think it's necessary every year if it's newer. But every couple of years is a good idea. It can extend the life of a system for sure.
And I would imagine today with the cost of energy going up, both electricity and gas, that it's got to save on consumption if you keep it serviced.
Absolutely.
So,
and changing the filters. It's just gonna help with your energy bills.
That's awesome. Often, I've seen air conditioner compressors on the outside of homes where the property will settle, where those air conditioner compressors are sitting on a pad. And now they're leaning or tilted. Tell us about that. Is that okay? Or should it be leveled?
It should be level. Absolutely. You ideally want to have it completely level. There are bearings and lubricants within the mechanisms inside of a condensing unit that ideally, when it's level, are lubricating the mechanisms the right way. And if it's tilting over, then it's just putting unnecessary and excessive stress on the system itself and can kind of lead to premature failure of a system.
Wow. So in wintertime, I've seen some homes that they actually have like a cover that goes over the air conditioner compressor. Is that a good idea? Does it?
There's two trains of thought on that. Some people say you should, some people say you don't. Ideally, and I don't cover mine, reason being is I'm with the way of thinking that it holds moisture in. So, it can just kind of create like a greenhouse environment around the actual condensing unit. They're built to be outside. And I think the airflow around them, I haven't had any problems with mine. Mine's 20 years old, so that's kind of what I'm going off of. But I mean, you ask 10 people and 5 of them will tell you to put it on, 5 of them will tell you not to. So
maybe check with your HVAC guy.
See
check
what he
with
says
the company that makes
system.
that particular system, and see if they recommend it or not. If it has any effect, positive or negative, on your warranty, right? Because that's something that we want to consider as well. What else do we have to cover, Chris?
Well, as far as the inside, a lot of times I see attic access scuttle holes that aren't necessarily insulated or weather stripped properly. And that's just essentially a highway. Obviously heat rises, just kind of a straight shot for hot air to escape the house up through the attic and cause your energy bills to go up. Along with that, warm air is usually more saturated, carrying more moisture, and in some cases I see when there's no insulation on the backside of an attic door, or it's not weather stripped, or there's gaps around it, or whatever the case, that saturated air going straight up into the attic, and sometimes if the ventilation isn't quite adequate, it can condense on roof decks, cause things like mildew and mold, and just obviously unnecessary conditioned air loss. So maybe checking your attic door if it's on the inside of your house and not in your garage, to make sure that it's nice and sealed up. And while you're up there, you can take a peek at your insulation levels as well. So today's standard is 18 inches of insulation, and that's gone up over time. That's where it's at today. But if you got a house that was built in the 50s and no one's added insulation,
it might be 8 or 9 inches up there.
You could have 4.
I mean, that was a lot of insulation back then.
Absolutely. The energy expenses back then weren't as high. They weren't as worried about having heat go out the window, so to speak. So adding insulation, if you're going to be in a house for you know, even 3-4 years,
It adds value.
it adds value and
Yeah.
comfortability of the house as well,
Yeah.
and will pay for itself in the long run.
So adding insulation, you want a professional to do it, or at least to have some understanding, because oftentimes you'll have soffit vents,
Right.
and you want to make sure that you don't
Obstruct
inhibit,
those.
right, or obstruct
Correct.
those,
Yep.
so that your attic isn't venting properly, because that ventilation is critical, isn't it?
It is very critical. If you know, a lot of times it might look, I mean, in some cases it's even cardboard at the soffit vents that essentially allows a channel for air to come up through the soffits and move air to the roof vents, the turtle vents, the ridge vent, whatever you may have on your house.
Yeah.
You want to make sure, they're called baffles. Sometimes you'll see they're made of foam as well.
Okay.
You'd never want to build the insulation up above where it would obstruct the airflow through a soffit vent.
Super. Yeah.
And as you said, it can, you know, if you have inadequate ventilation, roofs, buildings are made to breathe. If it doesn't have the ability to breathe, you know, condensation, moisture accumulation, and all of the things that come as a result of those issues can result. So,
hope you enjoyed those tips from Chris. We'll be back again. Stay tuned. Thanks.